Welcome to another episode of Taking Control of Cancer, the podcast brought to you by the North East London Cancer Alliance. I'm Steve Bland, and think of this podcast as a bit of a how-to guide to help you overcome common myths, fears and barriers to cancer prevention, diagnosis, treatment and care. In this series, we aim to provide both patients and healthcare professionals with tangible things that they and you can do to help when it comes to cancer, because while we know that not all cancers are preventable, there are things that we can all do that can make a real positive difference to the health and well-being of our family, our friends, our colleagues and ourselves. Okay, in this episode we're talking about what happens when the treatment finishes, because for many patients completing their cancer treatment is only just the start of their journey. I'm joined today by Steph Davies, who set up the charity Life After Cancer after her own experience of Hodgkin's lymphoma. As you say on your website, Steph, cancer shaped your life, so you created this space to support others in shaping theirs. I like that. We'll come back to that in 1 second. I'm also joined by Sarita Yaganti, who is the Programme Lead for Personalised Cancer Care here at the North East London Cancer Alliance. Thank you both for joining me. So, Steph, let's just get into your story first and how this charity all began. What's your sort of background? I mentioned Hodgkin's lymphoma there, but what's your backstory?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's many years ago. But for me, the piece that really made me think about life after cancer was 10 years after. I was told, oh, you should have frozen your eggs and you're probably going to go into early menopause. So I was in my kind of late 20s and I just thought, how do I navigate all of this?
Yeah.
I didn't have people around me to speak with. I did it with my best friend. And there were so many questions like, if you're dating, at what point do you say, oh, I might not be able to have children, without thinking, oh, it's a second date. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. So for me, I realized actually there's lots of other people in this situation and no one was talking about the post-cancer piece. So I put lots of leaflets around Waltham Forest in Walthamstow at that point, and it was just very casual. Put them in some cafes, and a group of 12 individuals came together and we just started talking about what life was like after cancer treatment.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because I think, I was probably guilty of this before I was, in the cancer world, before I understood a little bit more about what having cancer and what having had cancer means. But, when I was young, it was almost like a binary thing. Like you either died or you skipped away into the sunset and you were fine and you lived happily ever after. And it's so different to that, isn't it? I know from talking to so many people. The challenges. Give us an idea of some of the challenges, because they are vast, aren't they? And so many things that you wouldn't even think about.
Oh my goodness, where do you start from? Firstly, the fear of it coming back.
Yeah.
Chemo brain, fatigue, issues with sleep, questions around your identity. Thinking about what you want from your future, but also really scared that, if I actually think about what I want, then what if the cancer comes back? Because we know jinxing isn't real, but we convince ourselves that I don't want to say it out loud. From how do you start exercising after treatment? When do you know your body's in the right place? Okay, well, how do I eat well now? Because to a point with lots of people, they think, did I bring this on myself? Although lots of us know we didn't. We want to eat really well. We want to make sure we're moving in the right way. There's just so many questions swirling around your head.
And the guilt as well. I know from people that I know, talking back in my old kind of podcast life, we had Deborah, Lauren and Rachel, my first wife, Rachel. And Dame Deborah died, Rachel died. Lauren is, touch wood, she's okay and she's doing great. But she gets massive guilt. Why is she the one who is okay in inverted commas? That's a real thing, isn't it, guilt?
Yeah, that survivor's guilt. Yeah, I think especially when you get cancer when you're younger as well. And with that comes so much comparison to what, and I think social media is terrible for this, isn't it? It's just, they're doing X, Y, and Z and I'm not. Or you go back to work and you see other people in situations that you could have been in if you hadn't have had to step out for a year or two because of cancer.
Yeah. But there's also, I was thinking about this on the train down, and I was thinking there's also, the word positive feels a bit of a funny word to use, but there is a a way that people who've had cancer or been affected by cancer look at life differently afterwards that is quite positive, isn't there?
I think there's some research around that. Yeah, I haven't read it, but I definitely think so. When I work with people who finish cancer treatment, there's definitely like a thread between everybody. Everyone is just a certain type of person, you know. I think there's a lot of gratitude without that kind of toxic positivity that comes again from social media. And goals change, the things we want from life changes. It's often they want this kind of internal peace. And I just want to find 5 minutes for myself to have a cup of coffee in the garden, rather than these big goals that I think lots of us are brought up, like a bigger house and the bigger job and all of these things, you know.
How did the charity come about then? You've sort of touched on it a little bit, but how did it kind of begin? How did it grow? You know, where are you now? What kind of work do you do?
Yeah, so the first peer support group was in 2018, where we had those 12 individuals who came together. 3 months into that, they said, I'd like to stop talking about this and move forward. So my background's in digital marketing for luxury brands, so very, very different. But I trained as a coach, and we sat down and we mapped out all of those post-cancer pain points that I felt we could solve with coaching exercises and questions. And in a way, like my experience in marketing and working with people who were happy to pay £500 for a jumper, it's kind of the same, right? It's like you have these needs, like how can we address those? So we delivered the first program, the lottery funded it, and I was still working full time. And then we went into COVID and everything got taken online. Like for lots of us, it was, oh goodness, how do we do this? And we went from 12 groups a year to like 48 really quickly. And from just a couple of like casual programs in Waltham Forest to it was about 7, I think. So applied for lottery funding for 1 year. They said, I think you need 3, which was very kind of them. They gave us 3, and it meant I could quit my job in town. I could focus on this. And we just received another 3 years from them last autumn, in addition to funding from various other trusts, which is fantastic. But now we've got an amazing team, quite a small team, but we support about 1,400 people a year.
1,400?
Yeah, wow. And that's through expert sessions, peer support groups, a program, coaching workshops. We've got our first retreat in Malaga in January.
Malaga, very nice.
I was like, we need to go and get some sun
Absolutely.
in January.
1,400 seems like it sounded quite a lot when you first said it, but actually when you think about the number of people who have cancer and actually could use this service, it actually isn't that many, is it?
No, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of work to do, isn't there? Yeah.
Got to have your hands full.
Yeah.
Sarita, what do you guys do then in this kind of area? I know that you guys have been working with Steph and her team.
Yeah, so everything that Steph, you kind of, and both yourself, Steve, as well, kind of picked up is all of the things that kind of matter to us. And I think there's about 54,000 people living with and beyond a cancer diagnosis in North East London. So it's a huge pool out there.
54,000 just in North East London stuff to deal with.
And then the other question is about those groups, you know, what works for them. So, you know, you've got a fantastic support group there and resource, but it's just making sure that other people are aware of it. So it's the awareness. I know groups of patients who actually want to stay within their cultural realms because they find that that's where the support that they get, whether it's nutritionally or any kind of support around spiritual spiritual issues, for example. So I would love to replicate your groups to really fit kind of the different unique diversities of our communities. And I think the other thing is, Steve, that is just getting people to kind of come out and tell us what it is that they want. So we're actively trying to kind of, you know, say we're here to help transform or improve the services or access to services after you finish a cancer diagnosis. And Steph, we were just talking earlier about the cliff edge. I think most patients feel that there is a huge cliff edge when they finish their hospital journey or the hospital part of their pathway. They might have been given the all clear. It's like, okay, we'll see you for tests in a year's time or 2 years' time, you know, just keep coming back. Then what? So it's working closer with the GP practice of community services, because cancer is a long-term condition, and I'm not quite convinced that that's fully appreciated around the health system. You know, cancer's kind of seen slightly separate. But diabetes once upon a time used to be very much a hospital-based one, and now, you know, people are being managed really well in the community, closer to home. And Steph, maybe in your experience as well, it comes to a point where some people do not want to go back to the hospital because it kind of reminds them, and they want to kind of move away from that cancer and that environment. So we have to do a lot better to be able to support outside of a hospital setting, but somewhere that's still very much supportive, and it is about the cancer as well as any other long-term condition. But yeah, there's a lot of work that we need to do, and my team at the moment are trying to ensure that we kind of get some of those insights from the different people that have that lived experience, and carers as well, Steve. So that's we kind of touched on that as well.
The flag for carers, because I think that's an interest. I don't know if we'll get into that today, but in terms of life after cancer, for me, my life after cancer, not that I had cancer myself, but my life after my running with cancer is a very different thing to what it was before.
It's a teachable moment, isn't it?
Yeah,
you've learned a lot.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because as you were talking, then I was thinking about, people that I know who finish their treatment, and on the one hand, you're desperate to leave it all behind, and on the other hand, you need people to understand that you haven't. That's quite a difficult thing to balance, isn't it? And actually, it's hard for people in your life as well to balance how they treat you, because you don't want. I imagine you don't want your friends to mention it every 5 minutes, but you need them to recognise that it is still very much a thing.
Yeah, it's so tricky, isn't it? And I think you don't know that until quite a few months post-treatment. You don't know what you need, and no one teaches you to figure that out either. And I think lots about, and I know it's not the same thing at all, but it's the kind of maternity piece when someone has a child, or paternity, right? It's like, now there's so much education on almost like a step-by-step guide, right? There is no guide to post-cancer, or like you said, you're probably going to have these thoughts, and these might be some of the questions. And actually, this is how your friend or family can support you in these moments. And if you don't know, these are some of the questions that your friends can ask you. Even if you don't have the answer now, it's okay for them to keep asking you, and just ensuring that you know that that person's there for you. But I hear often that the individual who had cancer doesn't want to burden their friends and family because they feel like, well, they've had to go through this whole experience with me. So they start telling them that they are fine because they don't want to put any more on them. And it's
also
a bit of
telling
a circle,
yourself a little bit as well, aren't you? You're probably telling yourself, like, you're so desperate to be fine that if I say I'm fine enough, I might just feel it.
But then what happens when you realise you're not? Yeah. Those friends and family think, okay, well, get back to work and crack on with your life. And like you said, go run around the world and have a great time.
But I think it's the same in my situation where that I know I've always gravitated in terms of talking about this a lot to people who've been through a similar situation. And that's people like where your groups are so great, because you talk to your friends and your family who haven't been through it, and actually, why should they understand? How could they possibly understand? They couldn't, could they? They couldn't understand what you've been through. So all they can do is, pat you on the shoulder and tell you it'll be okay and they're there for you. But actually, there's not a huge amount they can do beyond that. And I guess that's where your groups come in, and that's where the work that you're doing comes in.
I spoke to my husband about doing this podcast today. So he had he's in remission for colorectal cancer, got diagnosed very young. And just that point that you made about when do you tell your partners, because he was not even told that it could affect his fertility as well. So when I first met him, it took about 2 months. He knew that I worked in cancer because what do you do for a job, that kind of stuff. And then he got the courage to kind of tell me that he also went through his experience as well. And, it really disappointed me on the fact that as a young man, nobody really gave him that guidance as well. So he could have had an opportunity to do something, freeze some of his sperm, perhaps if he wanted to have a child a bit later on. But he did feel that was all kind of taken away from him. But he came to terms with it because he thinks that, everything happens for a reason. Whatever that reason is, we don't know. But kind of seeing things through his eyes, me observing his, he wants to kind of get away from the cancer. He doesn't really want to talk to anybody unless they ask. And he'll say, yeah, I had cancer, and he'll put his hand up. But he wouldn't actively kind of talk to somebody else about his experience, or I experienced this. And I feel like he's got a lot to offer, you know. And again, if you can talk to your peers about it, are we kind of changing that narrative? Cancer is not necessarily a death sentence. Treatment's gotten so much better. People are living longer, but they're still not living well. And I think that's what we need to kind of address. Is not just saying, you're cured, see you later, you know, we'll have regular tests, come back in. But I'd like people to say, okay, you're stable, go and see your GP. We'll write to the GP and let the GP know, you know, to contact you, and a real clear pathway, what to do if something happens. Do you go back to the hospital? You've been discharged. Or do you go back to the GP who'll be like, okay, I need to re-refer you again? I know I'm putting in a lot of assumptions on that pathway, so do forgive me. I'm just trying to simplify what happens if there was a recurrence. Where do people go back to? Do they have to go through the whole investigations again? Or do they get fast-tracked because they've had a diagnosis previously? And then what's the support for the families? Because this would be the second time that they're going through this. So there's sleeplessness, anxiety, that also affects everybody around them, doesn't it?
It's so interesting, actually, the pathway afterwards. I was chatting to a friend of mine a little while ago. She has just gone through 5 years, I think, of clear scans, and she's now not being scanned every 6 months anymore. It's going to be annually, I think, or something like that. The timescales have changed, and she has gone from being quite worried about being scanned every 3 months to now being worried about not being scanned every 3 months. And that's a challenge, isn't it? That it sort of never ends, I guess.
Yeah, this anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is something we talk about lots as well, just the lead up to it and how it takes over, like the admin side of having cancer, the hospital appointments, this anxiety, the space that takes up in your head a few weeks before. Like, and it takes you a little while as well to work out what your kind of tips and tricks are to support yourself. You know, for some people, it's like, oh, make sure you like go for a nice hot chocolate after or before, like take a good magazine, you know, and for someone else, that's not going to work.
How big a part is language and all this? I know like anxiety is quite a new word, but you mentioned the term all clear before. There's a lot of terms, I think, that get kind of chucked around that maybe to people who haven't had cancer don't perhaps understand them. I can remember, you know, somebody might post on social they've had a clear scan, and everyone's going, "Oh, fantastic! You've got the all clear." And you know how important is the language that we use around the kind of milestones, but the kind of processes after cancer as well.
Like, I think survivor comes to mind for me, and that's one that our community don't like to hear. Yeah. But I know within, you know, your world, that'll be a word that you use all the time.
Yeah, so we've stopped using the word survivorship because, again, the feedback is some people feel like they haven't survived it, you know, and it then puts the onus on to them for not surviving it, like how other people are. It is living with and beyond the cancer, I think. Yeah,
and then you've got all of the words, militant words that the media love to use. Battle. Like you had a choice
fight,
in it.
Battle, all of those,
I will fight anybody who remember Rachel telling me before she died, when the black humour comes in, and she said, I will haunt anyone who says I lost my battle with cancer. It's such
it takes it
all
away, and it just puts this negative feel on the person that's had the cancer, almost like they didn't try hard enough. It's nothing to do with that.
It was like they had a choice in this. It was like there was no choice.
So being mindful, I think you're right, Steve, being mindful of how we our narrative, not just being careful because we're talking to someone about cancer. This is exactly not what I'm trying to say. It's just being mindful that not everybody's had a great journey, and it impacts differently for different people. It's very individualized, isn't it?
It is so individual, but can we just give a few bits of advice maybe that you know, to some of the more common things that you see in your groups? You know, you touched on things like dating, and how, you know, what kind of advice do you give to people around dating and and around when they might tell a new partner about their cancer?
I'm not going to give any dating advice. No. But I guess, and I say that about my own experience, and the average age individual in our group is probably like 35 to 55. So we
Yeah.
don't often hear that story.
Yeah.
And I have worked with Teenage Cancer Trust and Trek Stock, whereas that story will be heard in that space. But for us, it's very much like the peer support over and over and over again is, oh my goodness, someone else gets it. I don't have to over explain. And also I don't feel like I'm losing my mind because, you know, we spoke about isolation earlier. And I think for lots of individuals, they convince themselves, I'm the only person feeling this way. You know, I've got low mood. I don't feel like myself. I've got to go back to work and pretend that I was the person I was before, but I don't feel like I've got the energy levels. Actually, I don't even care because I'm going to go and print something in a photocopy and someone's going to moan about it and I've just had cancer. You know, like everything has changed, and having that peer support and seeing someone else in front of you and they provide hope for you to think, actually, it's going to be all right. And actually, I listened to this podcast and it was really helpful. Or, you know, I read this book and that really supported me. Getting those tips and tricks from the community is just offers so much value, I think.
It is. I would like to ask every employer actually across the country, do you think that you're doing enough to help people who've had a cancer diagnosis, gone through the treatment, to kind of return back to work in a way that is best for them? I'd love to ask that question because I'm sure a lot of people, not for fault of themselves, but don't really fully understand what those needs are. Like that flexible working. Somebody might have had a very rigid 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, but they have to allow some flexibility, not just for hospital and clinical appointments, but also well-being appointments, because the person going through the cancer know what they need to an extent that they should be able to have the freedom to do it without the extra worry and anxiety of what pressures of work puts in. You know, I don't want to lose my job, so I'm not going to go to that health and well-being support group, even though I know it might help me, because I don't want to lose their job or the money. So, you know, are we doing enough as a cancer system, whether charities or cancer providers or cancer alliances, to start lobbying, you know, where it matters, to allow people to return to work but have the freedom to be able to live beyond their cancer in a way that is more conducive to them and their needs?
If you could tell the workplace to do one thing to support that individual, what would you tell them?
Flexibility. 100%. It's got to be flexibility without the added guilt. So, you know, somebody might say, oh, I need to take this afternoon off, but I'll make up the time. You know, that adds more pressure, doesn't it? So, you know, why can't we be in a place where it's go for your appointment and then we'll see you when you next come in or something, without having that added bit, make up the time at this, you know, don't put any more pressure on.
That's hard though if you're like a small business or something.
Very true.
And you're looking to hire somebody and they say, well, I used to have cancer and I had cancer 10 years ago, or, you know, you don't want them thinking, well, you know, I've only got 4 people in my team. Am I going to lose them for scans every so often, or but it's interesting, isn't it? You might, you know, a lot of businesses might have a mental health policy or something. They might have in different policies for different conditions, but I bet, like you say, I bet none of them, or very few, will have any policies for people with cancer.
And you're right about the size of the company. So if it was just like 3 or 4 people within it, then it could really derail that company if one of them is off quite regularly. But is there something that, again, it's that lobbying, it's finding something from the space to help backfill that? I'm not sure what that means, but...
Yeah, you know. And also I just wonder, I only say this because all of our coaches and everyone who works at Life After Cancer, like, we're a really small team, but they've all had cancer. And if you think they're operating at 50%, if, you know, it's another tab open in their brain, isn't it? If like, oh, I'm struggling with this one thing, and you can go, actually go and take half a day once a week to go and focus on this thing. Okay, well, actually, when they come back, they're going to be 80%. Do you know, like, you're probably going to get more from that individual if you just give them that space to process it. They're going to return to work long term, like at a higher percentage. And, you know, if you're looking on like a kind of return on your investment, then it's going to be you're probably going to get more from them if you just allow them to do that when they need to. There's lots of stories where people have gone back to work, I hear, and they end up quitting because they're not being supported. And these people are in like really senior positions in town, in the city, and they're losing good people because they're not supporting them, and they just expect them to just crack on and get on with it. You know,
how big a thing is work in terms of living beyond cancer? Like, not just in terms of, time off for a scan, but how it might affect a career. How big a thing is that for the people you talk to?
It's huge. It's like probably in the top 3 topics after fear of recurrence, just how they do that. And it means, there's the going back because of the energy levels they might have, and how much they want to put into that role. And of course, these people probably have families to look after or parents to care for. And then there's the other side where purpose comes into it and meaning. And I've had cancer. Oh, hang on a minute. Do I want to do that job that I had to like roll out of bed for every morning? Like, it's fine. It pays the bills, but I don't really care about it. Mm. So kind of wanted to have my notice and then, but definitely want to do it now, and it's about finding work that makes them spring out of bed in the morning and give them the energy.
Do you think there's some kind of sometimes an existential crisis almost, like once you finish treatment, it's okay, what is this what I want to do in life, kind of regrouping? Because I hear the word, we're talking about phrases, the new normal, and some people don't mind it, some people really hate it because it's kind of want to go back to how it was before, but knowing that it never can.
But that comes back to the kind of positive, possibly the kind of positive thing that you have that moment, don't you, when you think that kind of epiphany of like, am I doing the thing that I should be doing? Am I wasting my life? Am I actually making the most of every moment, and all those different cliches that we hear?
It goes back to somebody who might be very high flying and, career has always been the driving force, but then they have this episode where all of a sudden things are changed out of perspective, and then the career is not the most important thing. It's about life, it's about living, it's about making the most of it. So it's kind of changing personal habits where you might work 16-hour days because you threw yourself into work, but all of a sudden you're in this space where I've done this for so long, what can I do? Life becomes precious. It's like a teachable moments in so many different things. You change your diet, change this, change that, or adjust certain things. And I guess my question really is about within your groups and from what are there like people that all of a sudden think, actually, I want to do something completely different?
Yeah, there really are. And there's so much in that, isn't there, from the pressure that sometimes we feel from the outside world of, oh, well, actually, I need to be making the most out of this now. And I do see cycles that people go through that, and then they probably think a little bit like, oh, actually, what most people want is kind of almost like an internal peace, time to themselves. We spoke about this earlier, didn't we? Around the reason before people had cancer, this is what I hear often in groups is, well, before I had cancer, I was stretched, like you said, I was caring, I was rushing to work, and then cancer stopped me in my tracks. I'm not doing that anymore. Like I need to ensure that I'm creating time for myself. Yeah. And I think that is often priority. But within that is, finding meaning. And that doesn't have to be a change of job, does it? Or having purpose. Like you can have purpose in really small little things in your day-to-day within your community or, whatever that might be. But I think for lots of us, it does think, I'm going to change everything. I'm going to change my job role. But the reality is it's not that easy. Like we need to pay
bills
to live, right? Yeah. So, it's a real tricky one. But I do see that very, very often that people... I think they just want to make sure that they're living a life that kind of matches where they're at.
And having whatever control back.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some more of the work the Alliance is doing then to support this kind of work, not just the work you're doing with Steph, but other support services the Alliance is working with. What else are you guys doing?
Yeah, so I'd like to just bring us back to the topic about carers and... people that support those that have had the cancer diagnosis. So we're really lucky in North East London to have Maggie's. Yeah. Maggie's is an amazing charity. I think you might have all come across.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they do a really robust like friends and family service as well. But again, part of our role is to kind of raise that awareness with our patients. And I think signposting is quite underrated, actually. But signposting in the right format, the right language, I think can be really, really effective. So if I had, some of our nurses or some of the teams that we work with are kind of saying, there seems to be this new, more of a trends coming through about some of the needs for patients, and it might be more about that isolation we talked about earlier, noticing that more people are feeling a bit more isolated because of cultural issues. So working closer with the cultural teams, with community teams to be able to, when I say community teams, I'm talking more about actual community based organisations. So it might be in East London, again, we've got some really great groups. We've got the East London Mosque that are really engaged within the healthcare system. So they know their communities far better than us. They know how we should be able to communicate with them. So everything that we offer is always offered. Obviously, English is the first kind of format, but then there are other kind of formats to be able to for these information resources, whatever, to be either offered or given. But that kind of relies a little bit on people either being digitally able to be able to get online. I'll click this QR code, it'll take me to a website, and then using my own device, I'll be able to translate it in language that I can understand in. But you still need to be digitally able to do that in the first instance. So, while we're trying to keep up with the evolution of our societies, we need to really be sure that we're not excluding those that might be more vulnerable, like there's loads of different pockets of groups, those that might be more deprived, or those that might be more of an older, frail age group, those that are far too young, who get affected by cancer but not digitally able because they've got some restrictions. There's so many different things. And things change. As our society is changing, we need to kind of really keep up and ensure that we are kind of changing and evolving in line with our communities. And we're so transient as well, like people come and go, and new communities come in, other communities go out. But I think if they can talk to each other, at least like keep some of that knowledge within the boundaries of North East London, for example. So I might have learnt something and I'll spread it to my community. I might leave to West London, take that knowledge with me, but I've embedded things within my, where I originated from, to hopefully help that to grow. I don't know if that makes sense.
Definitely does. I think that evolving picture is really important, isn't it? Because I think, I imagine more and more and more people are feeling like they want to talk about their challenges in this area. So you've got to be quite agile and evolve your services to make sure you're meeting their needs. Yeah,
absolutely. And needs to always change. But I think we can do it, but we need to all work together. Can't do it in isolation.
Do you find, Steph, a difference between the men and women that you talk to and that you work with? I'm just thinking, I wonder if men, this has been very stereotypical, but I wonder if men are more likely to tell everyone they're okay and not seek support after their treatment finishes.
Yeah, I feel like I probably can't quite say on that, because it's not like we have a 50-50 split in terms of who's in our groups.
That probably probably tells you the picture, doesn't it?
Yeah, and in the past we've worked with Macmillan to work with their men's groups, and my experience has very much been, oh, we're fine, I don't even know why you're here. And my understanding of what Maggie's might put on is they might put a gardening session on for them, or they might do like a kind of PT session as a group. So very much kind of like a side-by-side, rather than all of the groups we deliver, you're sat around like this in a circle. So that's my understanding of it. Also, as a facilitator, like, you need someone who has been in a similar position to you. So I can't sit in a men's group and expect them to open up to me, So that requires, and we've actively chosen not to go down that route. But, if we were to, then it would require to get someone in who's had cancer, who is a male, and can relate to that.
Do you see some of the cultural challenges that we're talking about? The Alliance, works with such a diverse population here. Do you see some of the differences in the people that you work with?
Yeah, and I think it's a bit different because, if we're running like an expert session on chemo brain, then it's to everybody, and that's us getting an expert in or talk about fear of recurrence. Whereas we can kind of amend what we're delivering in our coaching workshops a little bit different to the needs. So, for example, when we deliver our coaching program, which is 6 weeks long, we always ask a handful of questions, what their needs are, so we can amend our program to meet those needs. So that's how we go about it. But we can do that for our program, but we can't do that just for a 1 hour workshop.
Yeah.
So it's different in a peer support group. You know, some of them will chat for an hour and everyone can bring to the table, like you said, like, well, we need to work together. Like, we need to find out what you actually want. And that's changed so much, I think, even since COVID.
Yeah.
You know, like we saw people wanting so much more peer support after COVID. Whereas now, I think with social media and knowing that we can educate ourselves in a minute on what are the 3 things I can do to support me not worrying about fear of cancer coming back, our kind of expert sessions are like through the roof, because I think people know that actually I can speak to someone who studied this for 20 years and actually they're going to really help me to understand this. Whereas we weren't in that place 5 years ago because of social, were we?
Oh, it's completely different, isn't it now? I'm thinking of, you know, the cancer community on Instagram now. It's, you know, we get probably, well, not probably, definitely such a better view of how people are living with and beyond cancer, don't we, now, than we ever did, you know. I remember when the girls started You Mean the Big C, going back to 2018, there really wasn't a cancer community on Instagram, and it's such a vibrant place now with, you know, challenges and positives as well. But one of the big positives is that the outside world, outside of our cancer world, can see, you know, how amazingly people are doing in their lives with and beyond cancer.
Yeah, providing that hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember joining Instagram with Life After Cancer handle and realizing there's cancer influencers. Like, it blew my mind. I was like, what? How is this possible?
It's wild, but that wasn't there 5 or 6 years ago, was it? Like, it just wasn't. Like, and I imagine for people who, you know, were determined to live well beyond cancer, they must have been looking, well, where do I look for, you know, my role models and my guidance and my advice?
Yeah.
There wasn't anywhere.
Do you think that's also a little bit of a danger zone? Because we know how sometimes, like within social media platforms, it creates this slightly unreal world, and then that kind of creates, you know, somebody who's not part of that. It goes back to aesthetics. So, like, for example, everyone seems a lot more polished on Instagram. Then I look at myself in the mirror and think, oh, I'm not one of them. So it kind of like discourages me in a little way.
I think it can do.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about that again, that inclusivity, and not feeling alienated again by a group that's supposed to be about cancer, but all these people are looking way better than me. They're acting like they're recovering way better than me, and they're, you know, they've got this social media, but I'm still struggling, and I can't look like them even if I put my eyebrows on or whatever it is. You know, I'm just thinking about, again, creating a resource, but is there some kind of dangers knowing what social media can kind of turn a lot of things?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because I think when, you know, again going back to when the girls set the podcast up, this is 2018, you know, I can remember Rachel being at home and looking for people who were doing okay, you know, and she couldn't find them because the images of people with cancer and people beyond cancer on literature, on TV, it was always people with headscarves and you're looking a bit grey and looking really ill. So there's a balance, isn't there, between always seeing that, maybe that's the way you feel, but she was looking for people that, you know, were doing it, or not doing it better, that's the wrong term, but were, you know, were like really living well, you know, had the same disease that she had, but were, you know, were enjoying life and were making the most of it. And I think, you know, there's a lot of people talking about some of the people on Instagram, a lot of them, you know, they don't shy away from the fact that it's really hard.
I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about this, but there was an episode of Sex and the City where Samantha had cancer and she was giving a big, very important speech at a conference, I think, for women. Maybe, I can't remember the purpose of that conference, but she was sweating because she was wearing this wig. And halfway through her speech, I think she just took her wig off. She's like, screw this, and threw her wig down. And all of a sudden, people started standing up, clapping, and some people were taking their own wig off because she gave them the courage. And even though this is all very fictional, I can see that happening, you know, in real life with people who actually think, gosh, you're just like me. You know, why are we forced to like wear these wigs when actually, you know, again, it goes back to that kind of aesthetics, you know, why we're all like at this point where we have to look normal Otherwise, people will know that you're not well or you're going through treatment. Does that sound familiar at all?
It gives you permission, doesn't it? And I think what social does, it does give the visibility, doesn't it, of actually this is what's really going on, and for you to know, well, I'm not the only one feeling this way. But I totally hear you with the negatives. And I mean, the nutrition side terrifies me because it's not manned, is it? Anyone can give out any advice. But I really think like we have to take responsibility for ourselves, don't we, here? And be mindful of it. But we have a very, very, very active WhatsApp group, and it's the same, isn't it? That actually gets to the point and you think, do you know what? I'm kind of like done talking about cancer. It's like, yeah, fine. Like leave the group, or people are on social. They're like, it's too overwhelming. It's like, you have to manage your self-care or mental well-being. Come off it, delete Instagram, whatever it is. Just, so I think it can serve you at certain points in life or in your journey. Yeah. And other times you think it's just a little bit too much. It's in my face all the time. And that makes me think of triggers, you know, and that's when someone's in the press or celebrity has cancer and they pass, and that's triggering. But we have to learn how to manage that for ourselves, don't we? And actually turn away from it when it's not making us feel good.
Yeah. And understand, you know, I think there are different kind of stories in the press, aren't there? The press is really interesting. I can remember Rachel getting really angry. There was someone who was the wife of somebody quite famous who did a piece in the Daily Mail, I think it was, about how her cancer had been cured by, you know, alternative medicine.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that.
And then obviously a year later she died. And you know, I think it's the same though with life after cancer, isn't it? The way people are portrayed in the press, and they're going back to the language that the media uses. It is massively important, and I can see a, you know, positive and negative in terms of sometimes maybe the way people look. It won't be the way everyone looks, everyone feels. But I think that's a really important point you made, Steph, is, you know, there is an onus on us all, isn't there, to choose who we follow on Instagram, you know, to choose whether we follow people at all, whether we're on there at all, whether we're taking our guidance from that platform, or, you know, where we're looking for our inspiration or our hope or our role models, I think.
Yeah, I wonder how we tap into kind of the male psyche then. I mean, we can make
tough that.
We can make assumptions because they're not vocal that they're okay, and I think that's a really wrong assumption to do, because people do suffer in silence. And is there something about you know, being a man and having to have that strength and, you know, not to let things get too emotional? I don't know. Again, these are all very stereotypical.
I think definitely less so. I think the thing with men is, I think, you know, we're not going to sit around in a circle and tell everyone our innermost feelings. But I think this is a whole different topic. But you know, going back from the very start point of Rachel's diagnosis, I felt, this is maybe the carer thing as well, but the support for me as a carer and as a man was just non-existent, and a lot of that was, I don't know if it'd been different if I had been diagnosed and Rachel would have had the same, you know, pamphlets given to her or something, if she'd have done something about it. But for me, I was, you know, you're given a pamphlet by Macmillan and you say, oh, we're here for you too, and then turn back to the person with cancer. And pamphlet goes in the bin and you just never think of it again. And I wonder, I don't know how similar it is for people, for men living after cancer, but I just think that the way that we communicate with men has just got to be different. You know, I don't believe it's that men don't want to talk about stuff. It's just the way that the forums and the way you communicate with them has got to be different.
I wonder if Prostate Cancer UK have done some work. They must have done, because obviously it's directed at men's cancers. But again, there's lots of learning, and it goes back to that collaboration. You know, I'm not the expert, and I really want to work closer with experts who'd be able to unblock a problem to allow our residents, our communities, our patients and our carers to be able to ask and request for support, but also to be signposted. I think a lot of people get worried about this can of worms. I've heard that before. It's like, oh, I don't want to open this can of worms, so I don't know how to manage or treat them or signpost. So we have to do better at equipping those that are facing patients or carers to be able to signpost, you know, in a most efficient, effective way, and have that conversation. I'm very conscious I'm talking very NHS-y, but what I mean is, like, you know, if I'd like to think if I was a clinician, I would talk to both the people together, because we know that they matter to each other, right? So going back to the whole thing, what matters to you? And a lot of time for patients, what matters to them is their family around them. And what matters to the family around them is them going through the cancer. So you can't just separate what matters most to the patient, you know, because it's all intertwined. For those that have the support and have the family members. And, you know, I'm very conscious there are people who are dealing with this all by themselves and have no support, no one to talk to.
It's such a complicated picture, isn't it? And I think it just sort of start wrapping up, but it is a really complicated picture of, you know, this big web. A lot of people will have this web of people that are impacted, whether it be their employer, their family, their friends, themselves, obviously. But there are so many people, aren't there, to think about when it comes to offering support both during treatment and after treatment.
Yeah, and I thought about this very often as well. Like, there's an education piece, isn't there? Like you said, aside from the support, just as a baseline of this is how that person's feeling, because we all know when you're diagnosed with cancer, it's absolutely horrific. Like, we all know that, but no one knows what it's like once you finish cancer treatment. You know, so just that message of actually, you know, like I think it's 98% of our community told us they found it harder than go through cancer treatment. And these are all of the things that are going to potentially happen. And, you know, maybe these are 3 things that you could do to support, or 3 questions you could ask. The support things are different pieces, isn't it? That's really difficult.
So what would be your advice then? If somebody's listening, I know that the advice maybe to somebody who's had cancer would be different for everybody, wouldn't it? It's hard to give general advice in that respect, but maybe one thing I get asked a lot is my friend had cancer or just finished their treatment. How can I support them? What maybe are the things that you would give as advice to family, to friends?
So I think the first is having an understanding that it's going to be quite challenging potentially. Of course, not everybody feels this way, but, you know, their symptoms are going to potentially go on for the next kind of 6 to 12 months, potentially longer. So being gentle, being patient with them, and just listening, I think, without trying to fix it. I think that's really hard for lots of us to do. To think, oh, actually, I know what you need.
Oh, we love a fit.
We do.
My dad's an engineer. He found it really difficult. This is obviously our situation was different, but he found it really difficult for me that he couldn't help. He couldn't fix it. That was his kind of That's an important one.
I think showing up consistently. We've spoken about this, that actually there's a bit of a drop off, isn't there, at some point? Either the individual stops talking about it or someone stops checking in. Just keep checking in, even if they're saying they're fine. That's fine. I'm still here. I'm here when you need me. Whatever you need, I'm just a text away. And I think, like, you hear this in kind of mental health campaigns, don't you? Just asking, like, how are you? But, like, how are you really?
Yeah.
You know, like, kind of asking the question again.
Yeah.
So they really know that's not like, oh, I'm fine.
Yeah.
You know, because I think then people stop asking that question, don't they?
Yeah. I was the king of I'm fine when Rachel was ill. I remember saying it to so many people. Absolutely fine. And then my friend told me after she died, I remember him saying to me, he said, like, you looked ill. Like, you looked it was obvious that I wasn't fine, but you just say you are, don't you?
Yeah. Is there something that you wish that you could have done better for yourself, Steve?
Oh, I mean, like I said, this is maybe you're going a little bit off topic, isn't it? But the carer thing is really difficult, right? Because Rachel had guilt anyway of what she was putting us all through in her. If that's how she saw it. She was putting us all through this terrible trauma. So I imagine, this is how I was thinking back then, imagine how hard it would have been for her if I then lumped on top of that, that she had to be guilty about, what it was doing to me, how hard I was finding it. So, you just get on with things. You get up in the morning, take kids to school, you make dinner, you go to every chemo appointment, you do everything, and you just get on with it. And I don't think if I had that time again, I would do anything different.
Yeah.
Because that's just the situation that you're in, isn't it? And I would love to say, oh, I would have got help and I would have done this and I would have done that, but I could just imagine what that would have done to her if I'd let her know that I was having a tough time.
So I totally understand.
So I don't really know what the answer is,
isn't it? Yeah.
But I think I would have done exactly the same thing again.
Yeah. And when I'm reflecting back to when my husband first told me that he had his cancer diagnosis, I work in cancer, so I am very easy to talk about. I ask his permission. It's like, do you mind if I talk about you at work? Because I think you might come up in subject. It's like again, but I would talk to my friends or anything. They'd always ask how he is. Yeah, he's fine now. He's getting on with it, or sometimes he's a bit tired or whatever. But I'm very vocal and, I can talk to my siblings if I'm feeling really down or anything like that. But that's nothing like somebody who's going through the more palliative end of life care journey, because that is where it becomes extremely dark and very difficult. So I can totally imagine what you're saying, because you don't know how to do things differently because that's the only thing you've known.
Yeah.
So, when I'm thinking back to all those people out here who might be caring for somebody who's got cancer, I think the advice I'd say is just to contact the relevant charities, either Maggie's or yourselves or Macmillan, to kind of request some of that support, because you just don't know what's out there until you start exploring. Or ask somebody to do it for you if you haven't got the strength, or come to us. We'll do it,
Yeah. I think the thing that I wish I'd done more maybe is gone away for the weekend more.
Yeah.
Taking myself out of that a little bit more, because it is so all-consuming. But like I say, it's so difficult. And when some people ask me kind of how to deal with that situation, and I'm like, honestly, it's just going to be really hard.
Yeah.
And there's not an awful lot you can do about it.
And you can't hide it. You can't hide how hard it will be, because it's not going to be true, and not preparing people. You have to prepare everybody appropriately, right? If there's anything that, I'd like anybody who's listening to this podcast, if there's burning issues that they really want to share with us, we have a community where all the voices matters to us, through the program for the patient engagement or community engagement. We're trying to make those small steps to open those doors, and we don't expect people to come to us. We'll come to you, but we just need to know that you need us.
We haven't actually really touched on physical exercise an awful lot, but that's obviously a massive part of living with and beyond cancer. And you guys have got a big event coming up later this year. We
do. We've got we have had a series. We've had 2 already, and we've got a 3rd one coming out. So we're really conscious about the benefits that physical activities has on people that are living with and beyond cancer, and also those people around them as well, like family members, carers, friends, husbands, wives, whoever, neighbours. And what we wanted to do is kind of bring them all together to come and have some taster sessions on what physical activity can actually be. And we're not talking about just exercise. Exercise is like repetitive, set functions or set piece of task or physical activity. What we're talking about is adding something to your daily life. So getting off the bus one stop before, or walking the dog for 5 minutes longer, or when you're making a cup of tea, going to the kitchen, dance while you're waiting for the kettle to boil. So we're not talking about something really strenuous, but just add something, 5 minutes, 10 minutes to an existing task, so you feel a bit more active, and then slowly that'll help to kind of build up. And we know that physical activity kind of has really positive impact on your mental health and outlook, and hopefully kind of create a little bit more of a kind of like that brighter future feeling sometimes we get. So we've created these events. We've had 2 already, and we've got the 3rd one happening at Barking Sports House, and it's going to be amazing. And I'd love our community to come.
And how can people get involved?
So we have a lot of information on our website. So if you go to nelcanceralliance.nhs.uk, and then there'll be a link, community games. So if you search for community games, I think I did it and it came up quite high up in Google as well.
Excellent.
So yes, just have a little look on our website.
That sounds fantastic. Steph, how can people find Life After Cancer? What do people do to engage your services?
So they can self-refer.
Yeah.
So they can visit the website, life-aftercancer.co.uk, and head to the event section. And we've just got a list there of all of the online and in-person events. So the in-person events are in Walthamstow, in Waltham Forest, London, and everything else is online. So we've always got at least one session a week going on.
It sounds absolutely brilliant. And what you do, if you're listening and you're in that situation, go and check out Steph. Thank you so much, both of you, for talking to me today.
Thank you so much.